Hey, and welcome to the fourth section of my Webflow course. Today we're going to learn how to use components and how to create this nav bar, which comes for free in Webflow, and you can easily make it super adaptive to any device, and it's going to show a hamburger menu if the screen is too small. Now let's get back to where we left off. We have the body, hero, container, and the content block with a bunch of elements. We're going to close the hero and select body, and we're going to insert a new element. This time we're gonna scroll all the way down. We're gonna look at the different components. So what are components in Webflow? Well, basically they're pre-made elements that have specific functionalities, such as the nav bar, a search, a Lightbox component, a slider, tabs. So we're gonna learn to use a bunch of them in this course. The first one is the nav bar. So let's select this one. As expected in CSS, every time that you add something, it goes to the bottom and it just stacks like that. Now we're gonna move this to the first. So it's gonna be at the beginning of the website. If you wanna make it float three-dimensionally, you're gonna have to use position absolute. So position absolute. You can also use fix if you want to. When you scroll, it's always going to stick at the top. But in this case, we're going to use absolute because when you scroll, we don't want to stick at the top. We're going to have to set the width to 100% and then set the background to transparent. So if you want to make it transparent, you have to write transparent. Then we want to move it down a little bit by 30 pixels. So we're going to go to position from the top, set to 30. I'm also going to set the text color to black instead of gray. And I want to make it slightly bolder to medium, and for the size to 16. By the way, you can use exactly like the design tool where you use the up or down arrow key to increase or decrease the number, and you can also use the math. So +2 or -2. So that's a nice little trick. Next, we're going to take care of the logo. So I'm going to click on the logo container right here. Insert, press A, so insert an image, which is right here in the media. And choose, I'm going to set for the logo angle. Now, if you look at the container, you can see that it's not properly centered. So what we can do for the image is select the container of the image called brand and set some sort of a box and then center the image inside that box. So I'm going to select brand. I'm going to set to a width of 60 by 60. And then I'm going to use a flex instead so that I can center both vertically and horizontally. Awesome. Now, if we test this navigation, you're going to see that Webflow does all the work for us in terms of adaptiveness. If I click on preview, preview is where you can start interacting with the website versus non-preview is in edit mode. So I'm going to click on preview, and here I can see that these are just normal links, but if I go here, it has some interaction. And this is the default interaction. You can customize to have different interactions. First of all, let me get out of preview and then select the nav bar. And if you want to customize a component, you're going to have to go to this element settings. So I'm going to click that. This is especially useful for components, for dynamic stuff. So I can see that I have a bunch of options. For example, instead of doing a drop down that takes the full width, I can do overwrite. And I can set the state. So when I click on open menu, I can see it in action. You can see that over left, over right, and drop down. When I do that, such as overwrite, I can customize the appearance. So now I can just select the nav menu and then customize the appearance. So for example, the background should be white. So white. And if you do that, it's going to create a class. It's going to reset some elements. You're going to have to go back to the settings again, close and open the menu again, and we should be fine now. So if you test it, you can see that we have the white color. But one thing that I did wrong is that I set the customization in mobile landscape first, but I should have done it from tablet so that it can apply to both mobiles. So you can see that the customization does not apply here. So what I'm gonna need to do is just reapply the same things in tablet. So I'm gonna go back to settings for the nav bar, open it, and then customize again. Set it to white. Perfect. I also want to show you the Lightbox component. Let me just close this menu and go back to desktop and then close the nav bar. I'm going to select hero and then insert a div block that is going to allow me to set the layout for the Lightbox. And then for this div block, I'm going to add the Lightbox itself. And each one is going to be a Lightbox link. Let's start by customizing the image itself. I'm going to choose image and select mockups 1. It's going to be too big, but we can deal with the layout later. First of all, I want you to duplicate this twice, like this. So now we have 3 images, and just like normal CSS blocks, it's just stacking as the size permits. Now I'm going to select the div block. Let me scroll up a little bit and go to the inspector. And this is where I'm going to change to flex layout. And if I do that, you can see that it stacks proportionally using the maximum width. But I would like to have gaps. So I'm going to use the grid layout. And for the grid, instead of having 2 columns, I'm going to add a 3rd column. And the 3rd column is also going to have 1 fraction. As I mentioned earlier, fraction depends on the total amount of columns, and then it's just going to divide it. So 1 fraction at 3 columns is 33% now. I'm going to remove 1 row and then set the gap for each column to 30 pixel. Let me get out of the grid options, and then let's customize the images. So this one is going to be mockups 2, and this one is going to be mockups 3. Perfect. Now let's style each of those mockups. I'm going to click on the first Lightbox link and then set a padding of 30 on each side. If I click here and I click on the 20, it's going to apply to all sides at the same time. But sometimes that value is not custom. It has to be one of the values that I see right here. So one trick that I found was that you can press Shift and click this and just scrub it up and down to apply to all numbers at the same time. Let me put it back to 20 and we're good to go. Next, I'm going to set the background to white. So background right here, set it to white, and then the border radius to 50. We're also going to add a box shadow. So click on the plus sign, set to 180 degrees, distance 30, blur 60, and the black is going to be 15%. Now you're noticing that when I apply customizations to Lightbox link here, it does not apply to the rest. So as I mentioned previously, when you don't do customizations to an element, then it's just going to use the default properties and it's not reusable. As soon as you make customizations to the first Lightbox link, we set up the padding, the radius, the color, then it creates the class. And when it does not automatically apply to the ones that were default before. So we're gonna have to go back to the second and the third one and set to Lightbox link, which was automatically created after we set the first one. So I'm gonna go to the third one, Lightbox link, and select existing class, and voila. Another thing that you're noticing is that all of these are taking the full height and full width of each box. In this case, we want this to wrap around the image perfectly. So what we need to do is to set the grid properties. Instead of stretching vertically, we're just gonna align to the start. Next, let's add some padding to the div block. I'm gonna go to the padding, shift, and then click on the number and move down until you get about 30. Cool. Now it's ready for some testing. We're gonna click on preview, click on this, it's not doing anything. We're gonna have to go back and customize the Lightbox link. We're gonna go to settings, and here we have the media. We're gonna have to set the media for the first Lightbox link to mockups 1. Like that, when I preview and I click, it goes to a full screen mode of the mockup that I just set. I'm gonna have to do that for the rest of the Lightbox links. So this one is going to be mockups 2. And this one is going to be mockups 3. What you're noticing is that they're kind of separate. We can't navigate left and right. What we're gonna need to do is to enable link with other Lightboxes. So I'm gonna check this and create a collection called mockups. And I'm going to have to do the same for the other 2. So link mockups, and the same for this one. Perfect. Let's do some final test. Click this one, and boom, we have this neat arrow that goes to the next one and that comes back to the first one. Finally, we can make it adaptive for mobile devices. So for example, in tablet, you don't want these huge rounded corners. So we're gonna go to the inspector right here, and we can customize the radius to 20, and then the gaps don't need to be as big anymore as well. So select the div block and set the grid properties. Gonna set it to 20. The same for the paddings. We're gonna set the left padding to 20 and the right padding to 20 as well. It's looking good. Let's go to mobile landscape, and we can reduce the padding of the image a little bit. So we can click on Lightbox link and set the padding using shift and scrub up. Let's set it to 10. Finally, let's deal with the mobile portrait. So let me set and select this div block, and it's getting way too small to be seen. So what we can do here is to edit the grid and set it to a single column instead, so that it takes the full width, and people are gonna have to scroll a little bit more, but at least they're gonna be able to see the details of the mockup. So it's looking pretty good, and you can see that thanks to Webflow and the way they organize the media queries, it's super easy to make your layout adaptive. This is one of the things that personally I spend so much time dealing with all the different variations. So that's definitely one of the strong points of using Webflow to build your own website. All right, so let's publish this. And then we can test the website. And voila, this is fully adaptive. It's beautiful. We spent a fraction of the time that it would have taken to build this from scratch in CSS in code, because these components comes for free, and all you needed to do was to customize a little bit and set the media queries. Well, today we learned how to use components. how to create a nav bar and how to create this Lightbox navigation. And in the next session, I think you're gonna have so much fun because we're going to finally create that really cool phone interaction using a tabs component. We're gonna start with the layout first, and then we're gonna deal with the skew, the perspective, and all the animations later. So I'm really excited to show you these techniques in the next session. See you soon.